America isn't in crisis. At least, that's the official version. The airports are busy, the stock market has opinions about itself every single day, and somewhere near you right now, a new restaurant just opened with a 2-week wait for a table. But here's what nobody in an official capacity wants to say out loud. Across 10 states, the basic infrastructure of a stable life, the job that covers the bills, the doctor you can actually get to, the home you can realistically afford, is quietly coming apart. Not dramatically, not all at once, just steadily, in ways that don't make headlines but absolutely show up in the math of real people's lives. These aren't failing states. They're states where the gap between how things look and how things actually work has grown wide enough that millions of people are quietly falling through it. Let's count them down. Number 10, Nevada. Nevada has one of the fastest growing populations in the country. Las Vegas alone adds thousands of new residents every year. New construction, new casinos, new tech campuses pushing out into the desert. By every surface metric, this is a state on the rise. Here's what the promotional materials skip. Nevada consistently ranks dead last, or near it, in 2 categories that determine whether growth actually means anything: education funding per student and access to mental health care. The infrastructure for human development, schools, clinics, counselors, has never kept pace with the bodies arriving. The result is a state that can build a $2 billion arena faster than it can staff a school counseling program. Gaming and hospitality generate real revenue, but they also produce a workforce with limited mobility, limited benefits, and a cost of living that has risen sharply as remote workers from California brought California purchasing power with them. The people building the hotels can no longer afford to live near them. That's not a footnote, that's the whole story. Number 9, Georgia. Atlanta is genuinely one of the most economically dynamic cities in the South. Film industry, logistics, finance, a major international airport. The brand is prosperous and it's not fake. Step outside the metro area and the picture changes fast. Georgia has one of the highest rates of rural hospital closures in the country. Dozens of counties now have no hospital at all. And Georgia is one of the states that never expanded Medicaid under the Affordable Care Act, which means the rural hospitals that still exist are serving large populations of uninsured patients at reimbursement rates that make staying open a financial loss every single month. Here's the compounding problem. Georgia's rural counties have some of the highest rates of chronic illness in the nation: hypertension, diabetes, preventable cardiovascular disease. The population most dependent on healthcare access lives furthest from it, and the economic collapse of rural hospitals takes jobs with it, the same way it does in Mississippi. The clinic closes, the jobs go, the tax base thins, and the next closure gets easier to justify. The spiral has its own momentum. Atlanta keeps growing. The counties 3 hours north are quietly becoming places where getting sick is a financial and a logistical crisis at the same time. Number 8, Colorado. Colorado built a powerful identity around quality of life, outdoor access, progressive cities, a tech economy diversifying away from old energy dependence. Denver has had one of the most educated workforces in the country. People moved there specifically because it seemed like the place that had figured something out. What it hadn't figured out was housing. Between 2012 and 2024, Denver home values more than tripled. Wages did not triple. The gap between what the market produces and what working residents can afford became one of the widest in the interior West. Teachers, nurses, and city workers, the people running the institutions that made Denver livable, started commuting from further and further out, or leaving entirely. Colorado also has one of the most severe behavioral health crises in the country, with suicide rates persistently above the national average and a rural mental health infrastructure that is critically understaffed. The state has allocated funding. The workforce to deliver care doesn't exist in the places that need it most. The lifestyle brand is real. The lived math behind it, for a growing portion of residents, is not adding up. Number 7, Michigan. Michigan shouldn't be a surprise on this list, but for a reason most people don't focus on. The auto industry is real. The manufacturing base is real. But Michigan is quietly living through one of the most dramatic infrastructure crises in the developed world. And Flint was not an isolated incident. It was a preview. Thousands of miles of water infrastructure across Michigan's smaller cities are aging past functional tolerance. Lead service lines, failing sewer systems, treatment plants operating on deferred maintenance budgets that haven't kept pace with actual cost. The price of replacing this infrastructure is estimated in the tens of billions. The tax base in the cities that need it most, Benton Harbor, Detroit, Saginaw, has been shrinking for decades. Here's what infrastructure failure actually costs regular people. It's not just the water, it's the deterrent to investment. The reason young families make a different calculation about where to build a life, the slow erosion of confidence in the basic competence of the institutions meant to serve them. When you can't trust what comes out of the tap, something fundamental breaks in the relationship between a community and its future. Michigan has the resources to fix this. It has the political will intermittently. What it doesn't have is a sustained fiscal commitment to solve a problem that produces no ribbon-cutting moment and no election cycle payoff. Number 6, Texas. Texas has been the default answer to every question about American economic dynamism for 15 years. Low taxes, business-friendly, room to grow, and the growth has been real. February 2021 is the date that reframed everything. When the Texas power grid failed during a winter storm, 246 people died officially. Researchers put the real number closer to 700. Pipes burst across millions of homes. Hospitals ran on backup generators. And the reason it happened was documented clearly. The Texas grid, by design, operates almost entirely disconnected from the national grid. It was built that way to avoid federal regulation. And that design choice, made decades ago for political reasons, meant that when temperatures dropped outside the grid's engineered tolerance, there was nowhere to pull backup power from. The grid has been reinforced since, but reinforced is not fixed. Texas added population faster than infrastructure investment followed, and the insurance market responded to mounting storm, flood, and freeze risk, the same way it did in Florida and Louisiana. By raising rates and, in some cases, exiting entirely, Texas sold itself as a state that gets out of the way and lets you build. What February 2021 showed is that sometimes what gets out of the way is the safety net itself. Number 5, Ohio. Ohio is a state that doesn't get talked about, which is precisely why it belongs here. No coastal drama, no desert water crisis, no hurricane exposure. Just a Midwestern state quietly experiencing one of the most severe opioid mortality rates in the country, population stagnation in its mid-sized cities, and a manufacturing base that has shed jobs consistently for 2 decades, despite periodic announcements of its revival. Here's the number that lands differently when you sit with it. In some Ohio counties, life expectancy has declined, not stagnated, declined. In a wealthy, developed country in the 21st century, Americans in specific Ohio communities are dying younger than the generation before them, not because of a war or a pandemic, because of economic despair, its downstream effects on health behavior, and a healthcare system whose rural infrastructure is under the same pressure as Georgia and Mississippi. The factories that remain are more automated than they were. The jobs that replace the ones that left pay less and offer fewer benefits. And the communities built around industries that are gone are still standing, still populated, still trying to function with a tax base and a civic infrastructure sized for an economy that no longer exists. Ohio doesn't make for dramatic content. It makes for a precise, unignorable case study in what long-term economic erosion actually looks like from the inside. If this is landing close to home, and I suspect for a lot of you it is, drop your state in the comments. I want to know what you're actually seeing on the ground. Number 4, New Mexico. New Mexico has one of the most significant sovereign wealth positions of any state in the country. Oil and gas revenue built a permanent fund now worth tens of billions of dollars. On paper, this is a state with resources. It also consistently ranks last or near last in child poverty, educational outcomes, and food insecurity. Depending on the year and the measure, New Mexico has the highest child poverty rate in the United States. That combination, genuine resource wealth coexisting with some of the worst child welfare outcomes in the developed world, is the kind of structural contradiction that should generate sustained national attention. It doesn't. The distribution mechanism is broken. Revenue is generated. The systems that would translate that revenue into livable conditions for the state's most vulnerable residents are underfunded, understaffed, and in rural areas, physically inaccessible. Children in some counties have no realistic access to mental health services, early childhood programs, or adequate school facilities. The wealth exists. The pipeline between the wealth and the people who need it has never been built at the scale the problem requires. Number 3, Tennessee. Tennessee has been one of the most aggressive states in the country at recruiting business relocations. Ford, Oracle, Amazon, major employers drawn by low taxes, low land costs, and a state government that moves quickly to close deals. What hasn't moved quickly is the workforce infrastructure to support that growth. Tennessee has some of the lowest rates of health insurance coverage in the country. It did not expand Medicaid. Its rural hospital closure rate is among the highest nationally, and its affordable housing shortage in cities like Nashville has become severe enough that the workers being recruited to staff the new facilities can't find housing near them. Nashville's cost of living has risen faster than wages for the bottom half of earners. The music and tourism economy produces jobs, but not at incomes that absorb what Nashville now costs. Long-term residents, the people who built the culture that made Nashville worth relocating to, are being priced out of the city whose identity they created. The deals get announced, the ribbon gets cut, the warehouse worker making $18 an hour is doing the math on a one-bedroom apartment and coming up short. Tennessee isn't failing to attract investment. It's failing to ensure that investment produces broadly livable conditions for the people already there. Number 2, Illinois. Illinois shouldn't be on this list. That's the point. One of the most powerful urban economies on earth. Every structural advantage. And yet Illinois has been losing net population consistently, driven by families who aren't leaving in panic. They're leaving after running the numbers for 2 or 3 years and concluding that a stable's ordinary life no longer adds up. Property taxes among the highest in the nation relative to home values. Municipal pension obligations producing fiscal pressure that flows directly to residents through fees and declining services, and a family homelessness rate that consistently ranks among the worst in the country in a state with a functioning, diversified economy. The exhaustion Illinois produces is different from the desperation other states create. People don't leave Chicago angry, they leave tired. Tired of working hard inside a system whose costs keep outpacing everything they do right. That particular kind of quiet, compounding pressure is in some ways harder to fix than an acute crisis. There's no emergency to declare, no single lever to pull, just a slow, continuous calculation millions of people are making, one family at a time, about whether staying still makes sense. Number 1, California. Everything on this list exists in California at maximum scale. The housing shortage that's been building for 30 years. The insurance market contracting under wildfire risked the same way Florida and Louisiana contracted under hurricane and flood exposure. The chronic homelessness rate, 44% of every chronically homeless person in the United States lives in one state. The domestic outmigration of long-term residents who ran the numbers and concluded that the cost of staying had passed what they could justify. The reason California leads this list isn't the scale. It's what the scale proves. California has the resources. It has the institutional capacity. It has the political culture that treats these problems as urgent. It has directed billions of dollars specifically at homelessness and housing affordability, and the outcomes have not reflected the investment. That's not an argument about policy. It's a structural observation. When a state with every available advantage produces these results, the conclusion isn't that the problem is unsolvable. It's that the mechanisms being used to address it aren't working. An honest acknowledgement of that gap is the only starting point that leads anywhere real. Here's what all 10 states are actually telling us. The floor isn't gone, but it's thinner than it was. And for a growing number of people doing everything right, making reasonable decisions, showing up every day, it's thin enough that one bad month, one unexpected bill, one health event is enough to fall through. That's not a collapse. It doesn't look like one from the outside. The lights are still on. But a floor that holds most people most of the time while quietly giving way beneath an expanding minority isn't a stable system. It's a system whose failure is already in progress, just distributed quietly enough that nobody has to officially admit it. What state are you in? And is the floor holding where you are? Drop it in the comments, because the most accurate picture of what's actually happening in this country isn't in any government report. It's in what people are living through right now. If you want to understand which canned foods are quietly disappearing from store shelves, and why the people paying closest attention are already stocking up, watch the video on the left. And if you want to see the full story of how millions of American families ended up living in their cars while the rest of the country looked the other way, watch the video on the right. Don't forget to subscribe.